We're going to Zoom. Let's see. Let me get to Ibrahim.
Naeem.
Oh, Naeem. See if you can get somebody to ask Sister Brenda. She's operating in that space. If you ask her to put a sign on that to enter through the Bond Street door. So I don't want that door to open and close, open and close. So if they put a sign on the other side, then people can go around, and we can have this door with it. Yeah, yes, okay.
Recording in progress.
Let's see. Oh, welcome everybody. I'm just trying to get situated here. Let's see. Okay. So those of you, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Those of you who are on Zoom, if you're hearing me okay, give me a thumbs up.
We can hear you, brother Imam.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, Khalid. Let me see. Might be already set. Let's see. No. If you see a way to make it's kind of adjustments on that, you can try. Pictures coming up in a minute. I was thinking more about the angle. Okay. All right. Oh, where's my other? Okay, I think we're ready to go. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum again. And this is, with respect to the time of this segment, this is the last portion for the Ramadan intensive sessions on this subject. I want to say again, the subject has to continue because the subject is not complete in accordance with my expectations. But of course, it was much more vast and became more vast than originally conceived, which means therefore the fullness of it I'm much nearer to. In fact, this part of the presentation is one that called for really the most, let's just call it original research and inclusion and giving it its symmetry in the whole story. And that is particularly as it relates to the significance of Professor Farad. So I decided it literally is like this morning. It's like literally it's just okay, Fahim. You just got to submit. You just can't force it. You can't force it, or it won't be fair, and it won't realize what your original intention was. And your original intention is for people to have, to the extent that you are able, the fullest grasp of basically the whole story, the inside story of Farad, his psychology, his strategy, that history, and to give it its due called for all of the time that we have today. If the previous 2 hours is any message or indication, then in these next 2 hours, inshallah, round figures, we will be, mashallah, the way I see it, I don't know what Allah's plan is, but the way I see it, we will be after 4 o'clock. But in any case, to give it its fullness was such that just had to do that. So the real input and the real impact and the real significance, to the extent that we're able to share it, of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Imam W Muhammad, and how that relates to the renaissance, as we say, of Al Islam in the world. It's going to take going to take more time. Another little bit of a confession. It's like I had gone out to say, okay, well, look, even if you don't get to finish this part, then such that you deliver the message as relates to Imam Muhammad uh, and his role. Get that? So I had actually worked that up to practically 90% or so, and then the change that I just told you about came and said, no, you're not going to be able to do that. So in order to keep the symmetry, in order to keep the flow, in order to keep the connection, you just have to push the time forward in terms of completing it. So give the fullness to each part as much as we can in the way that we're approaching it. So if it takes more time, or since it takes more time, then just submit to that fact and go on. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing with that initial statement. So here we go. See that statement? Very important. And it's kind of humorous, but it's very and I'm saying it's a rabbit hole for anybody, no matter what you think you know or understand about Farad, about the Nation of Islam, and about that whole movement. We're about to go into a rabbit hole here for that. In fact, hit that light switch there, and see if we still got company outside. And if that company is gone, I can use the microphone. Uh, yeah, yeah. And find the young man that was standing at the door. See what's up with him. We got, for anybody on here who happen to have any kind of touch with the Nation of Islam doctrine, we're going to mention a little more about it. We're handling some TNT here. We want to make sure that some innocent people don't get blown up in the process. It's very important. So be patient. You're going to need all the breathing room you need for this. Okay? So we won't rush it. Okay, so we're just not going to use the in-house mic right now. So you got a status check for me? It's all clear? All right. All right, well, here we go. Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Oh, there's in that box. Put your flash on it. There's a large on-off block that just needs to be switched on. So on your right side, One block, the power on.
That's it.
It's the biggest one. Is it on the farther right, maybe? You got lights?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. That was it.
Okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Did you put the other one back in place?
Yes, I did.
All right, good. Because Juma's die on one switch. So, got it. All right, here we go. So again, we caution everybody. This is a deep rabbit hole, and we're gonna go with a, inshallah, reasonable pace, and cover what we want to cover for this segment. This is Redemption 2 by design, the first resurrection. So here's a statement from Imam Muhammad, February 12, 1983. He says, so Farad, I repeat, he was from the Sephardim Jews, and he calls himself Farad, and you can see in that word Farad, take the S off of it. That is, you can see in the word Sephardim, take the S off and take the ending off, which is the IM. You know that's how the Jewish names end. Cherubim, Elohim, cherubim, means many angels and a company of angels. Elohim means many gods in one, Elohim. Yes, Sephardim means the company of the Fards, F-A-R-D-S. Yes, all of the Fards. Sephardim, the secret order of the Fardim. And what is Fard? It means not having any clothes on, naked. And what does that mean? Not wearing knowledge, education, culture, knowledge, naked. An animal with no hair is naked. A land with no trees is with no vegetation. Pardon me. A land with no trees and no vegetation is naked. A man with no clothes is naked. So it means the company of the naked. Edification, meaning here's some detail. The term Sephardim, this is not the Imam speaking here. This is edification of what he just said. The term Sephardim refers to Sephardic Jews, a group of Jewish people whose ancestors lived in the Iberian Peninsula, which is modern-day Spain and Portugal, before their expulsion in the late 15th century. Okay, so reminder, 1492, Isabel Ferdinand, the Moors lost their supremacy in the place. In fact, Islam was outlawed in Spain. That's how low Islam, quote unquote, and the Moors had fallen at that time. So late 15th century, you know, if you've been with us during this journey, the slave trade via Portugal and Spain got its real start in the mid 15th century. So all this is going on at the same time, and the Jews were expelled and Muslims were expelled, etc., from Spain at that time. And so this is the Iberian Peninsula, all this is happening in that place, in that geography. So the name Sephardic comes from Sepharad. So here we are. This is the place to really pay attention here. Sepharad, a biblical location that is often identified as Spain in Hebrew. Sepharad, a biblical location that is often identified as Spain in Hebrew. All right. Sephardim is plural, is Hebrew, that's plural. Sorry about the cough. So Sephardim, its phonetic spelling hides Sephardim. So you have the S front slash Fard, Fard front slash IM. And in Arabic, the word Fard, that's the Arabic term of the Fard, phonetic spelling, Fard is grammatically singular and means individual or singular. Okay, so Fard, it means singular, oneness, individual in the Arabic grammar, right? It can refer to a single person or a single item. It's used to denote singularity as opposed to plurality. So, I lesson, English lesson C1 says, my name is W.F. Mohammed, and that F stood for and stands for what is we're taught to pronounce Farad, right? So, W.F. Muhammad, I came to North America by myself, right? And what it means, I came to North America fard. I came to North America fard, by myself. That is, I came on my own, I came independently, and the time of his coming was identified as July 4th, 1930. Listen, the symbolism just goes on and on and on and on. It's just symbols wrapped inside of symbols. And this is the rabbit hole, this is the unwrapping that we're speaking of. So July 4th, 1930 has to do, of course, with the Independence Day. And the first uniforms of the Nation of Islam and the prime uniforms and the essential and the classic legacy uniform of the Nation of Islam is the red, white, and blue uniform. The uniforms are red, white, and have always been red, white, and blue. The browns and the whites and the others, all those came later. The original was red, white, and blue. It's not an accident. Because the idea of independence and the idea of independence being the prime objective, separation, the prime objective of the whole mission was to give the lost found members of the Nation of Islam independent thinking. All right? So I came to North America fard, right? But the Nation of Islam, we were taught and we were told to pronounce it Farad. So whenever someone from the Nation of Islam sees F-A-R-D, they say Farad. And those of us who know it, we say Farad, Master Farad, Muhammad Farad. Okay. But unbeknownst to them, it comes from the singular, the grammatic singular term of Hebrew origin, Sepharad. So the P-H-A-R-D of the phonetic spelling of Sephardim, which is plural, Sepharad, which is singular, which is what his focus is. I'm singular, I'm Fard, Arabic. But I'm also Sephardim, a single Sephardim, and I have a plan that is Farad. So in the Nation of Islam, in its order, Farad is how you say F-A-R-D. And Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, he said for many, many years, till he was like a teenager, they would pronounce, and they were told to pronounce their name Muhammad, Wallace Muhammad, Herbert Muhammad. That was the way they were told to pronounce their name. So as to hide what the real name is actually saying. And they weren't told that for years. Okay, further edification. At the end of the Moors dynasty in Spain, many Jews of the late 15th century, they converted to al-Islam. and among them were the Sephardim. Thus, like everyone else, among those who did convert, they brought their proclivities, they brought the proclivities of their time with them into al-Islam. Just like I was talking about, Bilalians, African Americans, ex-Negroes, what have you. So when we become Muslims, that everything that we were before and the shape of our personalities and dispositions, they didn't change when we walked through the door. We brought who we are and what we were into the door, and that's everywhere. So in the same way, those who were Jews, and among them were the Sephardim, they, yes, became Muslims, but they didn't leave their proclivities behind. And what happened in consequence of this is that they developed distinct customs, liturgical traditions, and languages influenced by their interactions with the local populations of the area. Imam Muhammad's statement continues, the Sephardic Jews are the Orientals, the Jews who gave the world Orientalism, Oriental mythology, and all that. They're the ones who dig into that. They're the ones who spread it. They don't give you no sense. They just flood the world with a lot of symbolism. And so that's a part of, if we look at, as we continue with this, it's why almost every, metaphorically speaking, almost every rock you turn over, it has a hidden meaning in it. Yeah, it's just filled with it. And look, one of the key things for Taylor Swift, one of the latest idols that has been created in this world, one of the quote unquote gimmicks, brands, or things about being her fan is that they always hide little symbolic little things inside of whatever, either in the song or in the poster or something else, a video, etc. They call them Easter eggs, right? And so that part of it is, and we've done with my other group, we really went all the way through that with Taylor Swift. But so the idea is that this symbolism, so coming from the Sephardic Jews, coming from those who deal in Oriental mythology, and from those who that's their tendency, that's their proclivity, then no surprise that much of that is also a part of what was good, because this is what they do. And so Farad was really, how can you say, the tops in doing all this. Now, going on. So right now we're talking about the Spanish side of it, right? So the triple black god. I'll come back to my parenthesis there. The triple black god of the 25,000 year cycle. He was Farad's father, right? His name was Alfonso. Alfonso is Spanish, okay? There is a massive connect between King Alfonso VI and El Cid, who was born Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar. Then the name El Cid, he was named El Cid, it was given to him by the Moors. And it's from El Said, which means master, and it also means black. When we talk about Sudan and we talk about Aswad, come from the same root that you get El Said, which also means master, right? The great military, this is further describing him, he is a great military commander of the 11th century Spain that served both Muslim and Christian rulers, which raises the matter of mixed race and mixed religion. Okay, this is all a part of it. We stop here real quick. MashaAllah, Allahu Alam. For some reason, and I mean, and at this moment, I'm recognizing it. I don't know if it's that I'm talking about my family, when I grew up from very young age. I think the movie El Cid was released in '62, so it couldn't have been very much older than 11 or something. But the point is that image stayed in my mind because when I decided, okay, well, let's go look and find out. It seems like to me that there was a movie or there was. I was first. I'm just remember. I was remembering the poster, but because somehow those words El Cid just took out my mind from way back from that time. Okay, so whatever. Yesterday, day before. So I'm looking it up in preparation, and so El Cid, and so there's Charlton Heston again. Charlton Heston. I'm laughing because he's just in all them God roles, right? You got Ben Hur, you got Moses, you got even in Planet of the Apes, he was the human. And this one, El Cid, a little tidbit that has nothing to do with this speech, but just passing it on. Sophia Loren was his counterpart, quote unquote, love interest or whatever in the movie. And the story is the fact of history. He could not stand Sophia Loren. He couldn't stand her. And Sophia Loren was like woo 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 for the world, right? Charlton Heston couldn't stand her, and he said the love scenes, whatever, they were the worst. The romantic scenes, just couldn't stand it. So something happened with the release of the movie. She wound up suing the movie company for the release of the movie, but that's something else. But it's just the other thing, it's like Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra and all these other folks playing these roles of these great heroic roles. And I guess if they're in charge and somebody else is in charge, then that's who they're going to put in the roles. Any case, so the issue of mixed race and mixed religion is a big thing right here, because this triple black God, right, is also hiding, I'm taking a step back, is also hiding one of the messages that Farad is putting in the mythology. And this very verse itself, 39:6, this verse 39:6 is the verse in the Quran where it says Allah is the one who created you in the stomachs of your mothers through 3 wombs of darkness. Because this 39:6, that's the way I remember it, the way it always comes to mind. Oh, that's the verse, because 3 is in the numbers that you have to remember, right? You got 3, 9, 6, etc. It's like multiple of 3, and every time when you add that up, it all rounds up to 9. You have the 9. That 9 is the fullness of 3. So all that is in that. So when he says triple black, because just think about it, just like the deportation of the moon and the rest of that. It's about thoughts that you never thought before. It's about you never thought, no, this man, he ain't just black, he triple black. Ooh. Question. What does triple black look like? I don't know, but it sounds good. So this triple black God is speaking to 3 wombs of darkness. And I'm going to say this because I don't know when we're going to get to it, but I'll just say it because I know that if you're not in touch with something of the grammar or some sense of this symbolism, it's actually called, well, from a visual perspective, it's called semiotics. So it's semiotics, and then also, of course, you got symbolism, which is also holding the same meaning. Having no sense of it, sometimes you'll naturally miss it, but then having a sense of it, you'll know that it's not just connected to one thing. It's connected to this, and it's connected to that, and it's connected to that. So I just want to mention these connections. I'm going to keep on moving. We talked about the relationship between the Atlantic slave trade and Jonah. So Jonah in the bottom of the ship. among the property in the story, but he is the property when you understand him as such. So he was in the hull of the ship, and when he in the hull of the ship, and then he would get cast over the side, and in the belly of the whale, in that, and then when he was cast on the shore, then the statement is, "I have a 3 day journey. I have a 3 days journey." So from this pitiful situation, from this circumstance that I was in, then I was put into the place of my destiny, which for us, off of the Atlantic slave trade into the chattel slave system. Then we have, after this dehumanization, now we have to return to our original state, and that's described in the Jonah story as a 3 days journey. Connecting that Jonah story with us, and this idea of the triple blackness, and this idea of coming through three wombs of darkness, that's what has to happen. You have to come out of those and through those three wombs of darkness in order to realize your original humanity. And our very historic experience is what has been pushing us through all of that. That's what has actually been happening with us. And I said I'm not going to stay there, but another aspect is Joseph. Here's something for you. Joseph, you can find Joseph, my brother Mujahid, who was with us here for a few days. He made a very important W.D. Muhammad connection in this way of symbolic interpretation. Is that okay? Jonah was in the whale, and then Joseph was thrown into the whale. So the whale and the whale, they have this very common symbolism or common significance, because Jonah's thrown down, Yusuf thrown down in the whale. So the whale, that connection, and both cases, the Jonah on the ship having to do with us being captured Africans, being taken over as property to this country, fits with Jonah, because one of the reasons, as Imam explained, we wouldn't be on the ship if we had handled the business that we were supposed to be handling with Islam in Africa. But it's our failure over there, just like Jonah's failure to fulfill what Allah has ordered for him, though he was capable and called for it. So therefore he had to suffer the consequence of it. So we did, in that scheme of things, suffer the consequence of the failure of our African ancestry. We're an extension of that, and so we became, for that reason, the Jonah in the hull of the ship, and ultimately over here needing to take the 3 days journey. Okay, Joseph in the well. Also, his brothers were the ones that put him down. His brothers put him down, but they didn't want to kill him. They just wanted to get rid of him. And of course, we know now that chattel slavery was not what the Africans in general were expecting to happen. They had no idea what the nature of chattel slavery was. They thought slavery was slavery, and okay, you lost this war, okay, so you got to go. But no, they sold him into a situation. But again, just like us, the Bilalians who are the outworking and outcome of that. We, like Joseph, we're on the top of the mountain in so many ways, especially by comparison to our brothers in other parts of the world. But that's Joseph realizing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had for them. That's also a Joseph situation for us. There was okay, it comes up later. So the three garments, but I'm gonna leave that because I'm getting off, and it takes up I take up more time than I need to. Okay, so got you. All right. So let's move on from this. So the three rooms of darkness has to do with the fact of our need to restore and realize and actualize our lost humanity by traversing the darknesses that came and that come in consequence of the condition that we find ourselves in. As we continue, we'll detail that a little more. So here is Faraz's mother, on the other hand, his father was a triple black man, right? Remember, Yaqub had created the devil, right? And so this was all to wind up the plan, to end the plan, because the devil was given only so long to rule the black man, and then after that, his end is going to come. So Farad was the son of a black man and a white woman, right? And this white woman, her name in the doctrine was Baby G. Baby G, the way we would say it. And again, hiding is another word, hiding a reality. Baby G, which is actually a reference to Baba G. Baba G. And mashallah, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, mashallah. I'll never forget the day forget the day, but the situation that when I found this out. There was a newspaper. There was something that had blown off, and it blew under my car. It blew under my car in my house, and I had to, bend down, reach down, and pull this paper from under the car. When I pulled this paper from under the car, that right there was a picture. It says Baba G, Little Black Sambo, and I said, "So wait a minute." Little Black Sambo, Baba G, there again is Farad planting symbolism in the mythology that holds meaning in his plan, okay? So he's like weaving a tapestry of symbols in the mythology that if you can find them and uncover them and understand and network them, see the flow, see the symmetry, see the relationship, see the connection, see the significance of this with that. You see the connection with this with that, you see the connection with that with this. Remember, the idea was independent thinking. The idea was to change the mind of the one whose mind had been, quote unquote, destroyed, suppressed, etc., distorted by the plantation life. So the idea was to resurrect the sleeping, midly dead so-called Negro. So the work that had to be done had to be work on the mind. So all these crazy, massive numbers and problems and situations that were deemed to be scientific, etc., it's like it's making that mind of the Negro that was so oppressed and suppressed by so many things in the nature of their life, it was massaging it and bringing it back to function in a natural way. So this is Farad's artificial stimulant, let's call it, to get that mind to working in a way that it had been deprived of in the quote unquote 379 years of captivity. All right, so Baba G, she lived in the Caucasus Mountains, right? Which is not far from the Pyrenees and there in Europe and the like. In any case, that's what the story tells us. And since she had never had interaction, she never interacted with the other devils, because remember, in the doctrine, all white people were devils. And so the idea is that, okay, here's the triple black God, who is the leader of the 25 wise scientists that meet every 25,000 years and write the history of the world in the Bible and the Quran. But so here, this triple black God has to find a white woman who is otherwise a devil, but she's a virgin because of the fact she never had interaction with the other devils. So therefore, she was not a devil in that sense. So when you look at all of this, Imam Muhammad, he explained to us that the structure, the doctrine, the design of the Nation of Islam's ideology, religious, how can you say, doctrine, it was Trinitarianism painted black. Trinitarianism painted black. So in the homes of some of us, where you had the Jesus plates with the blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus up in the kitchen, we took those down and put up the picture of Farad. Took that down, put up the picture of Farad, right? The triple black God Alfonso, that was God the Father, the God of the God of Trinitarianism, or the God of the Trinity, which again, the triple blackness ties into the Trinitarianism that's already in our mind. Again, Farad, all he did, he just took the clothes off the clothes hanger in the closet, kept the clothes hanger, and hung new clothes on the hangers. So now he changed your wardrobe, but the skeleton that provides the support for the new clothes was all the old hangers. So the triple black God, that was God the Father. The virgin Baba G, who never interacted with Caucasian, that was Mary, the mother of Jesus. And so Farad was Jesus. Farad was the second coming of Christ, born from God and a virgin, and here he comes. All right. Now, but that's what's working at the deep subconscious level, because they all match up. You can tell me about triple black God interacting with someone who never interacted, who was a virgin by that description, and then they gave birth to a child together, and then he's special in that sense, and he's sent and missioned by God, blah, blah. And so it's like, okay, we already got a frame of mind, a frame of reference to say, yeah. So all you do is just trade places with that. And so that, but now, and the name itself, Baba Ji, goes to something very particular in the macro structure that needs to be changed. I have to use a word like that because I'll go ahead for right now, distinguishing the microstructure and the macro structure. The microstructure, I'm going to take that to mean, I want you to understand it by understand that's that deep internal stuff that's deeply rooted. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, blah blah blah. That's deeply rooted stuff right there, right? So the triple black, the triple black, the virgin, that deals with the microstructure. Okay, but the Baba Ji, when it comes to the prejudices, the stereotypes, and those external forces that are pushing against the psyche of the quote unquote the black man, such as it was, or the Negro. So the Baba Ji language it connects with the external macro stuff, right? When you add the Baba Ji to the triple black, it's dealing with the internal stuff. And so Farad was dealing with both of those things with bringing that in by that introduction. The introduction of Baba Ji also introduces Little Black Sambo. Okay? So we're going on with that. Now, Sambo, Zambo, they both have the same feel. Just like we talked about Shlomo Sand, you can find his name also in the Hebrew as Shlomo Zand. So the Z and S trade places. And we get it. We got it in English. If N-O-S-E, what is that? Nose. R-O-S-E is, what is that? Rose. Right? So the S and the Z share places. They trade places. So Zambo also derives from a West African word meaning uncle, or second son. This is Zambo or Sambo. Okay. So, like interchanging interchange of F with PH, we have just talked about the Z and the S. In the Caribbean, it denoted mixed. So now we're back to mixed race, mixed religion. All right. So in the Caribbean, it denoted mixed African and Arawak ancestry. In Spanish, it referred to mixed African and Native American descent, right? The story is a fairy tale about, Fahim, what's going on, man? The story is a fairy tale set in India with Caribbean elements. And so my attention was drawn to the fact that Rihanna just did a $6 million half-hour show for an Indian billionaire's son's wedding. And her big hit song was Umbrella. And I usually look for it, I say, wait a minute. This from the first time I heard it, and one of the, I'm not trying to interpret it now. I'm not trying to. Sometimes I get caught up, but I don't even know the lyrics in terms. But there's this thing that's like Ella, Ella, Ella. So it's like you saying that. I know we got Illa, we got Allah, we got that God thing in there. And so you got those people that will. And she don't necessarily know this. I'd be surprised if most of these people who sing these songs have any idea. Just like Taylor Swift's Mastermind, she don't know. She don't know what that song. But that song Mastermind, you look at it, that is straight Jacobite. That's straight. That's him telling you so. I mean, you can actually see, metaphorically, Shaitan just singing that song. It's like that's his song. Okay, so umbrella. Okay, so it's going to be inshallah even clearer when I get to some of these next pages. But the thing to register, it's a combination of the Indian and the Caribbean elements. The Sambo story, the Indian and Caribbean elements. All right. The Nation of Islam connects with the story that is Sambo. This is how does the Nation of Islam? It's just kind of like when you do this, it's like kind of like a crossword puzzle, right? So you go across and you get this, but then it connects with another word going down, and so that they may meet at the letter E, or they may meet at whatever other letter the case may be. But this one goes across and this one goes down. And so this is also the kind of thing in the tapestry of understanding the symbolism of something as cryptic and as mystical as Farad's mythology. So the Nation of Islam connects with the story by calling the American Negro the uncle of Master Farad. That's his name, the uncle of Master Farad. Okay, so you got to go back the other way. You got to go from uncle to Sambo. And since you now know that you can go from Sambo to uncle, and so now, because I never tried to figure it out. It was just, that was the way it was. I'm talking about when I was a member of the Nation of Islam. The uncle of Farad. See, if you start thinking, okay, but don't spend any time thinking it right now. You gotta stay with me. But the idea is, like, when you talk about somebody who's somebody's uncle, then you got to figure out who's the brother and who's the all the rest of that. But I'm not doing that, and we didn't do that. It's just okay. That's just what it's called, uncle. But Farad already know when he put in. Well, when I gave you Baba G, I also gave you Sambo, and when I gave you Sambo, I also gave you Zembo, and when I gave you Zembo, I gave you uncle. And so now I'm giving you a little key that if you know how to turn the key, then you'll know that these things go together and they have meaning, right? So that Farad put that into the mythology, highlighting the mixed heritage. This is the key I say that it's focused on. It's the mixed heritage and the mythology involved in the intermixing between the God and the virgin, who was a devil, but not a devil. Okay? And so tying us to the biblical reference, because since Farad would have to be in that paradigm, he would be a Christ. He'd have to be. You have God, and you have a virgin, and you gave birth to a son. That's what we're talking about. We're still back at Jesus. So you never got out of the Jesus cage with the Nation of Islam doctrine. And the Imam said you were taken out of one darkness and put into another darkness, talking about these three wombs of darkness. You taken out of one darkness, put into another darkness. But the Imam said, mashallah, he said, would you rather be in the dark in your house or in somebody else's house? Right? So you're still in the dark, but you're in your own house in the dark. So this coincided with the idea of Christ coming in the likeness of sinful flesh, and what we would call and talk about passing for white, right? So in Romans 8:3 it says this: for what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, because the sinful flesh was white flesh, right? So sending his son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, right? And I gotta say, when you read statements like this, and then when you read statements that were given to us in the Nation of Islam, just like we read Malcolm's a transcription of Malcolm's statement about the deportation of the moon, it's like you hear it, okay, it's coming from a sacred source that is in whoever's mind is reading it. It's coming from a sacred source, and so it's nothing to question. It's just take it in the way that it is, and don't think about it. Just understand what you're supposed to understand, believe what you're supposed to believe about it, and don't try to think about it, right? That's how it was in the Nation of Islam. That's how it is in Trinitarianism. And so therefore, since there was no critical treatment of it, it was easy for it to get through, because we don't subject these things that we accept on faith, we don't subject them to any kind of critique, and that's why it got deeper and deeper into our psyche, because it was never objected to. So here in this English lesson C1, it says, my name is W.F. Mohammed. I came to North America by myself. My uncle was brought over here by the trader 379 years ago. My uncle cannot speak his own language. He does not know that he is my uncle. Now here is one supposedly, but in this lesson as it goes on, as we pointed out, 38, the question, or rather 38 or 39, whatever the case might be, it's like, here's the God telling you that you're his uncle. Wow. All right, so the book was the Little Black Sambo book. It was a children's favorite for 50 years, but it became controversial due to racial depictions. Original European illustrations portrayed Sambo with stereotypes, like these you're seeing. Black skin, wild hair, red lips. Sambo has a history of racial slurs, right? So Farad was very much in touch with the racism there. Okay, so here comes some more details, right? We're still talking about Sephardim, okay? In the story of Little Black Sambo, a boy named Sambo outwits a group of hungry tigers. The little boy has to sacrifice his new red coat and his new blue trousers and his new purple shoes to 4 tigers, including one who wears his shoes on his ears, right? That's a very telling thing as well. So Sephardim, quoting the Imam, Sephardim, so it means the company of the naked, he says, right? So now going on to the story of little black Sambo, Sambo is also a symbol of something small, i.e., the Jews, for example, outwitting something big and ferocious, like the British imperialism or the pagan Romans, which was also one of Farad's targets in the mission, meaning British imperialism, the whole South African apartheid kind of thing that was going on for years, and also the colonization of India, because we know that the real Farad, quote unquote, the person, was originally from India. Okay. So here you have these images. You got the mammy look, and then you have the little black Sambo who, is being dressed up in his clothes right now, but those are clothes that's going to be taken off of him, right? So now continue the Imam's quote to understand this Sephardim and as it relates to nakedness, right? He said, that's, speaking of the name Farad or Farad, that's Farad in this part of our conversation, that's signaling something that you're bringing on psychologically. That is when he said, my name is Farad, right? It's signaling something that they are bringing on. And the physical indications point to some plan or some scheme that they are working on in the internal person, the psychological nature. Remember Ezra and Nehemiah, when they were working on trying to get a feeling of Jewishness to go in deeper even than the prophets had embedded those sensitivities. And so this psychological work on the internal person is also the area of work of the Sephardim. So they are working on the internal person, the psychological nature. And what have they done to the psychological nature? Made it bare. Stripping man's soul of his protection, laying his soul bare, where he has no shame, no conscience, no education, nothing protecting his bare soul. His bare soul is exposed to every kind of contamination, all kinds of pollution, right, etc. Inside of this particular quote segment that the Imam was talking about, he's talking about the introduction of nudism in the society, etc. It was a part of the psychological operation to denude the society of all these things, to denude it of shame, to denude it of conscience, to denude it of education, to bare its soul, in which, like a tree without bark, bare its soul and expose it to every kind of contamination. It's a destructive move. But the idea, the fundamental idea of Fard and Farad is the creating this nakedness, all right? And going on, the experimental clinic, in that experimental clinic, slavery stripped the African chattel slave of all culture, civilization, i.e. clothes, and that's what produced the Negro. What produced the Negro was taking away all those things. We were denuded in that way, stripped of language, culture, religion, traditions, etc. Naked. Then the experimental clinic of Farad, the Nation of Islam, the Negro was stripped again of the clothes they were dressed in. That is, we got a new set of clothes. We were stripped of the clothes we were wearing when we came. The experimental clinic stripped us naked again. But then, in order for us to adapt and survive, we had to put on the new clothes of the psyche that comes with adapting in order to survive in these situations. So the brand new set of mental effects came into us to replace the mental effects of the first clinic. We'll talk more about the biblical scientific significance of this a little later, inshallah. So the Imam says, I mentioned Farad Muhammad, and he's the naked one. He didn't come with any knowledge, not any culture. All the knowledge he gave us was myth. He gave us myths. His purpose was to create a living satire, and you may call these people Satiriasis. The Sephardim the satirists. All right. This is from the Imam's meeting here too. So, so the Imam says, Farad spoke with pictures because his people weren't, his people being the 17 million rusty locks, right? Because his people weren't intellectually mature. He didn't use he didn't use classic satire, but childish fabrications like Yaqub's history and the deportation of the moon. It's like, mashallah, from where we stand and sit or what have you, nowadays, it's just, I mean, I guess why wouldn't it be? But it's like, man, it's like, does somebody really believe that? Right? That story that this happened, that happened. We're gonna say a little more about it in a minute. But that was sufficient for the mindset, the mentality of the group. Remember, when was he coming? He was coming 1930s. You know, what was the education level? What was the literacy level? How much education of the people in the ghetto that he was speaking to? It was very, very, very low, limited, etc. So this is it. I had a slide in here that I had it would say, it said, but wait, there's more. I think I took it out. But wait, there's more. I'll say it myself. And here it is. This is absolutely, positively massive in terms of understanding Farad, his strategy, and who he was. And it's W.D. Farad and H.G. Wells. If you don't see in this picture a mirroring of Farad and H.G. Wells, it's just because you don't want to see it. You just don't want to see it. I mean, hairstyle, posture, relationship to the book, etc. That is it. And what we're about to walk through is the utilization, W.D. Farad's utilization of H.G. Wells' masterpieces to craft his own mythology. Okay? Now, in terms of H.G. Wells, he was a satirist and a novelist, and the many other complimentary things that are said about him that we may get to. But I want to emphasize that his work was a very serious work intended to change the world. It wasn't just like entertainment. I don't know. Maybe that's what the meaning of pulp fiction. His wasn't pulp fiction. So pulp fiction is sort of like, well, maybe it doesn't really mean anything. It's not intended to mean anything. Pulp fiction. His was not pulp fiction. So he was a massive novelist, and his writing was designed to spark change in the society that he was in, which historically was called the Victorian society. Some certain mores, guidelines, limitations, etc., boundaries that he was trying to break, and he was doing his through literature. Okay, so W.D. Farad, he was aiming at breakthroughs too, and he used strategies, and we can say literally, from H.G. Wells. For example, The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man. In such works as The Invisible Man, 1897, it tells a fantastic tale of the relation of an individual to society. Griffin, which was the key character's name, the title character, feels great personal bitterness. The novel reflects and critiques Victorian attitudes. Religion resonates in such names as Thomas Marvel, which matches up with Doubting Thomas, Jesus's disciple, and Griffin. A griffin is a mythical half bird, half beast. This is that title character, or rather, the title character, he is the Invisible Man, is half bird, half beast. And at the end of the story, you learn that Griffin, he's going around the world in the environment, in the city, doing all these different things. People can't explain them because he's invisible. When he does what he does, finally, I think there's a culmination of the plan where they catch him in that invisible state, but then as they were beating him and whatever else, he somehow comes into the. I never read the end of the story, but I've heard an ending of it. And it's sort of like it's a revealing that he was an albino. Okay, so Griffin was an albino, and he was angered because of his rejection based on the color of his skin and not his content as a human being. So that's what made him mad. Y'all messing with me because of the color of my skin. Okay, it's not hard to get from an invisible albino man to a visible black man and put him in the same condition. And indeed, that very thing is a part of what happened. You have Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, right? The man makes a statement of, I recall reading the book by Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man. The most interesting expression I found in that book for me said, in effect, somewhere along the road, he found that he was, quote, severed from his social responsibility, right? So he got disconnected from his social responsibility. And that being the heart and the essence of the invisible man, as mentioned there, then social responsibility must be the key to visibility. So when you look at it, it says somewhere along the road, he found that he was severed from his social responsibility. What is that? What is it to say? He was stripped of his clothing. He was stripped of his clothing. Because when you look at the imagery there for the Invisible Man, H.G. Wells, well, what happens when all of the clothes are taken away? Okay, you take away the hat, take away the shirt, tie, jacket, what do you have? Invisible Man. So when someone gets stripped in the way that's talked about, then that is the invisible man. And so not having that clothing, you become an invisible man. Being severed from your social responsibility, you become an invisible man. So that's the black man. So that's one of H.G. Wells' connects here. They made this movie, came out August 1990. Dark Man is a superhero film directed by Sam Raimi. The plot revolves around Dr. Peyton Westlake, a scientist working on a new type of synthetic skin for burn victims. So here's somebody else with a skin problem, but just look at the poster imagery for sure that all the bandaging and all that is the Invisible Man trope. It's the Invisible Man trope because it's the same kind of wrapping that the Invisible Man would have or has had. So who's the dark man? The dark man is the Invisible Man. Who's the Invisible Man? The Invisible Man is the black man. So this movie literally is about that. Continue to read this. His research catches the attention of a gangster, a Robert G. Durant, who destroys his lab, severely burns him, and leaves him for dead. That's Negro. That's the slave plantation and the trauma in it. Leaves him for dead. Westlake survives, but is left with severe burns, trauma, over most of his body and conditions that render him unable to feel pain, but also causes his emotions to drive him to near madness. So because of the trauma, because of what happened to him, his emotions are totally out of bounds. In the absence of that flesh that would provide a boundary for those emotions, if you will, they're not there. But his story is the story of the black man and the trauma in slavery and effort and the intention, the attempts to try to get a permanent identity, because that's what that skin represents. That skin represents an identity. He has no identity. So actually, in this movie, I believe it is that he would make different, like the Mission Impossible characters, where he would make a mask and he would wear that mask, wear that skin for a period of time. But after a certain period of time, the skin just breaks down, and so then he would be exposed. So that's the case as it relates to Bilalians, African Americans. The idea is that we have not formed a stable identity. An identity will get started during one period, during one phase, but then that identity goes away. So we have no permanent identity as a people in the main. Here's another one. So we talk about the Invisible Man. Here's another H.G. Wells classic. The Island of Dr. Moreau, where animals were made into men. Well, the slave plantation, the experimental clinic that it was where men were made into animals. In the Yaqub myth, it was on the island of Pelan or Patmos, where men were made into devils. So in Yaqub's story, Yaqub was on the island too, and his island was not changing animals into men, he was changing men into devils. That's Yaqub. Then in the Nation of Islam, it was where white supremacy's black animals, that is those sleeping mentally dead so-called American Negroes, dehumanized individuals, they come into the Nation of Islam, and there's a new operation that starts happening with them. They are changing what has been produced as black animals. They were made back into simulated men. I say simulated men because the fullness of that potential was not realized at that time. Just like the work of the great leaders, as Imam Muhammad talked about it, it said that their work was not complete. So likewise, Elijah Muhammad's work could not be complete without a further step. Remember, 3 wombs of darkness. You had to get through all 3 wombs of darkness. Slave plantation was one of them, and we understand now. We're going to go further. The darkness in the symbolism and the synthetic fabrication of the Nation of Islam and its doctrine and as an institution. That was a second womb that you had to come into in order to come out of the first one. You had to come into this one, but then that being darkness, you have to come out of that darkness a third time. Meaning, not that darkness the third time. You have the third step is to come out of the second darkness. Now you're in a situation where you come to illumination. So H.G. Wells and Dr. Moreau, H.G. Wells and Dr. Moreau and Farad Muhammad and Yaqub are analogically the same. Each one of them were working on and working through their revenge, scientific revenge fantasies, intending to satirize their society. What Farad was bringing was satirizing the whole world, this world that does what it does from and for and about white people, from and for and about black people. This needs to change. And so I have crafted a theatrical, a satirical, a mythological structure, which when people engage it, they project out to the world a message that makes all of them rethink their way of being, right? So both were scientific revenge fantasies, that is Yaqub's myth, as well as the Isle of Dr. Moreau. They were both scientific revenge fantasies that were intended to satirize the society's elite. Continuing on the H.G. Wells Farad connection, the fertile period for H.G. Wells' work and his place in the literary world and the piercing esoteric intellect of Farad plausibly dictates that Farad read H.G. Wells. It's not, how can you say, It's not like, nah, he probably didn't know. Farad got into everything that was popular, everything that was, and sought to find out how can it work and serve his mission. So, furthermore, the clear thematic reflections of Farad's work in H.G. Wells, meaning I can find Farad's work in H.G. Wells, which, as we just talked about, The Invisible Man, for example, Dr. Moreau, The Island of Dr. Moreau, etc. When you couple that with the fact that Farad borrowed from every popular influence, which we went through, in the Black society available at the time, even Lil Black Sambo was popular at the time that he was doing what he was doing. Say, okay, how can I use this? How can I put this in the mix, right? So Father Divine and Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, etc. In order to construct his own experimental satire, he makes that conclusion that Wells influenced, that is, we can make that conclusion, that Wells influenced Farad not only plausible, but it's likely. Both of them were working to reverse what they found objectionable in their societies at the time. Wells was against Victorian repression, Farad was against white supremacy, and both the authors and their main characters were scientists. Dr. Moreau was a scientist, and Yaqub was known as the big head scientist. And both of them were working outside, even against the constraints of the society, to reverse the effects that they found offensive in them. So each one is trying to change their society. And I'm about to give you the smoking gun. All right? It's right here. No doubt. This absolutely positively removed any doubt that I had that Farad borrowed, took from, fashioned his work upon much, especially when you have those major myths, Yaqub's history. Because even H.G. Wells is the War of the Worlds side. I haven't even tried to make the connection because it just became just so unnecessary. But when you talk about the War of Armageddon and you start talking about the Mother Plane and all the rest of that, well, then you can start talking about H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. But between the Isle of Dr. Moreau and Yaqub's Making of the Devil and the Invisible Man and the whole skin issue, the issue of being, how can you say, hated or oppressed because of the color of your skin, I didn't need a whole lot more. But when this came through, it's like, whoa, this is the clearest evidence. H.G. Wells has a short story. And the title of the story is The Door in the Wall. It was first published in 1911 as a part of a collection titled The Door in the Wall and Other Stories. The conflict between science and imagination is the major theme of the story, which was enormously popular. Remember, if it's popular, Farad wants to know about it and he wants to see how he can use it, which was enormously popular when it first appeared. Now listen to this critically. The Door in the Wall is considered by both readers and critics, this particular story, by readers and critics, to be Wells's, that is his, finest short story. And I remind you, I don't think I said it before, but I'll say it now, that he was believed by many in his time to be the preeminent novelist working in the English language. Think about that. It's like, okay, who's writing in the English language? Whoever is writing in the English language. Okay, who's the best? H.G. Wells. That's saying something. Of all those that are working in the English language, he was deemed by many to be the preeminent novelist. And so now put on top of that, yes, he's the preeminent novelist. And this story, The Door in the Wall, is his finest short story. I think that means that it's important. Okay. So it's considered by both critics to be Wells' finest story. So now, what's the story? What's the story? Here's the plot summary of The Door in the Wall. Redmond, who is the friend of the protagonist, whose name is Lionel Wallace. Okay? Story. Wallace mentions about his lonely childhood. This is a truism even for Imam Muhammad. This is before Imam Muhammad was born, but it became also the truth in Wallace Muhammad's actual life. Okay? Wallace mentions about his lonely childhood until one day when he wandered off from the home, okay, into the streets of London. I got to say something right here too. There's a stack of movies that we could just walk through and read off Imam W. Muhammad and all the works that he talked about out of the movies. The one right here on this statement, when he wanders off from the home into the streets of London, Being There, the movie Being There with Peter Sellers. That story is about Imam W. Muhammad. And it is confirmed also with a very critical scene in there where he goes to this TV station. And the call letters of the TV station is WDM. What TV station? The label, we got ABC, CBS, NBC, etc. You got those three. But in terms of WDM, what kind of choice is that for a television station? It's because they're sending that message. We don't have the time. Well, I mean, it's not the plan anyway. But that movie talks about that, and I'm saying this story also again repeats that. So for us, but now this story was written before Imam W. Muhammad was born. All right, so it's not that it's like biographical from that. It's actually prescient, and actually, let me just keep reading, because what you'll get is, oh, okay, he's working a plan, and the plan worked out. Okay, let's continue this plot summary. So Wallace mentions about his lonely childhood until one day when he wandered off from home and into the streets of London, where he saw a green door next to the white wall. Wallace is instantly drawn to the door in the wall. After the first time seeing it, and that he wanted to open it. However, due to his family, who have high expectations and strict upbringings towards Wallace, Wallace didn't dare to open the door in the wall, and from that day on, Wallace is tempted and keeps the secret of the door in the wall and fantasizes about the enchanted world behind the wall. Really, 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 really something. So, who's the child in the story? Well, it's blatantly Wallace, right? So Wallace is the future leader of the people. In the story, Wallace is the future leader of the people. Farad already knew that Wallace, my plan and the way he's doing it, my plan is that this be Wallace. So he told Clara and Elijah to name him Wallace. Okay. The father in the story, of course, is Elijah, and the Elijah in the story, the Elijah in the story, i.e., the father of Wallace, was a very strict man, a lawyer, and that's the way Elijah Muhammad was. In fact, the Imam mentioned sometimes that the day that there was a day when he was left alone in the house, and Elijah Muhammad and Clara Muhammad was going off to a meeting on Wednesday, whatever, I believe it was a Wednesday, and he knew that Wallace knew that his father was going to judge somebody because there was something about the nature of the way they were going, when they were going, how they were going. Okay, somebody's going to be, he's holding court wherever he is. And it was that night when he was there being left alone, when he had this conversation, this prophetic statement, I'll even call it. Not that he's a prophet, just kind of like prescient statement. He's hearing in the house, creaking in the house, as the house cools and what have you, then you get this creaking, and he's in there by himself. And so he starts getting those fears, right? And that's when he asked, he said, "Oh Allah, if I'm not seeing you correctly, help me to see you correctly." And so from that young age, he began to have, ideas growing towards the rejection of Farad as God and the like. So the white wall that the green door was in was like the uterine wall of the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam had a purity about it. We had investigators, we had inspectors that were designed to keep things. We had restricted laws, and we had no alcohol, no gambling, no drugs, no fornication, all of those. That was the white uterine wall of the Nation of Islam and its restricted laws. And Elijah Muhammad was the lawyer. He was the father of it all. And the green door was Al-Islam, the Quran, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Imam had beginning to have this love for Al-Islam proper and the original way of life, etc., of Islam, etc. And that was the green door. But he wouldn't go through that door for some time because the fear of rejecting the falsehood in his father's teaching, until it wasn't something that was fearful for him. Falsehood in his father's teaching and disappointing his father's hopes. Because here's the story going in the reading here. So Farad told the family to put Wallace's name behind the door and to trace it every day. This connects with H.G. Wells' story, and it was also declared by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that my job is not to teach you religion. My job is to clean you up and take you to the door. Take you what door? The door that Wallace's name was on the back of. So Wallace was also, in this instance, he was the door. Thus, this is why the Nation of Islam, in actuality, in its totality, in its functionality, its overall function was wudu. It was wudu. It was just to clean us up. And then when we got to the door and when we go through the door, now you can make salat. You can't make salat till after you make wudu. And so we had to be cleaned up by the Nation of Islam before we could be taught the religion and before we could pray. So when the authorities came to force Clara Muhammad to put her children into the public schools, because Wallace was out there playing with the rest of the kids, what have you, or sisters, brothers, whatever the case may be. It said, what did she say when they said he has to go to school? You had truant officers at the time. She said, I'll be dead as this doorpost before I put my children in your school. And which child was it that was behind the door when she made that statement? Wallace D. He was the one that was behind the door. MashaAllah. So, speaking of the work of Farad, looking at my time, we are going to be a little over. Life is, everybody has the freedom to do what they have to do. Alhamdulillah. Yes. So Farad is working a strategy, right? And here are two models in modern time for that strategy, right? The Matrix and The Village. There's a movie called The Village. If you haven't seen it, it's one of those M. Night Shyamalan movies. So what happens in the climactic aspects of The Matrix and The Village is like what happens vis-a-vis the deportation of the moon when understood. What was the goal? The goal was to blow your mind, to blind you to the world. See, so Neo couldn't see until he was blind. When he was blinded, then he saw the whole matrix, the whole picture, right? And in this other movie, The Village, everybody else was succumbing to the fear that this artificial kind of boogeyman, yeah, let's use that. The artificial boogeyman that was created, that was designed to keep everybody in the village in line. The only one that got away from those influences and that, how can you say, broke the story and broke the tale, was a blind girl. So this blindness and this blind girl has to do with being stripped naked, not the physical girl in that sense. It's talking about taking away the mind that you had been given, and it's by that mind that you were made blind. So in order for you to get your sight back of reality, you have to lose the mind that they gave you that made you blind. So you had to get that off in order to see again, right? And that's what happened in both of them. Now, take a breath, and if you were with us when we talked about the story of the mutated enzyme, we talked about the mutated enzyme, the lactase enzyme, the lactose environment, but then that bacteria was able to create or repair itself where it was not known and understood before. It was unable to repair itself, or rather, it was able to repair itself. And so there was a mutation that happened inside the mutation that restored the normal function of the mutated enzyme. That's precisely what happened with the Nation of Islam. With the Nation of Islam, the mutation that happened on the experimental clinic, slavery stripped the African chattel slave of all the culture, civilization, clothes, and that stripping, that's one. That stripping was what made the Negro, right? Now, the Negro, in surviving, it had to take on a mind that was survivable, or rather an adaptation that made their life survivable, such that they took on another mind, another set of clothes, if you will. Then that clinic called the Nation of Islam, in that Farad, he stripped the Negro again to reverse the effects of the first clinic, slavery making a Negro, the Negro not having the mind that God wants them to have, or not having their own mind. It was necessary to strip that mind in order for them to have another mind, and that stripping is what enabled them to see where they couldn't see before. But in the Nation of Islam, there was another kind of blindness that you came into a blindness because what you were being told itself was a myth. It was a myth that was in your favor, but it was nevertheless a myth. So this John 9, 1 through 34, I didn't go back to it just recently and look at it, but I'm going to operate upon the presumption that it has to do with the blind man that Jesus gave sight to, right? And Imam Muhammad said that what Farad did, he blinded a blind man. So that's like what we're saying. And what it is that, okay, you were an African over there, you were taken in slavery, you were put in the experimental clinic, the slave plantation, you were stripped of all your culture, religion, language, traditions, etc., memories, etc. All right. So that became a blindness for you in reality. So now you're blind. So the only world you see is the world that slavery has given you and put you into, and that's the way you see. That's how you feel to the world. In terms of that, that again is a blindness to your own nature, if you will, your own reality. You've been blinded to that. Okay, so that's a mind, but that has to be stripped away in order for you to restore your vision. How did Farad do it? He did it with the darkness of symbolism. He did it with the darkness of mythology. He did it with the mystical maze. He did it with these mind-blowing stories and numbers, etc., that just blows away that old mind, because we're given a whole set of thoughts that we never thought before. And not only thoughts that we never thought before, but thoughts that would dismiss all the other perceptions and way of seeing that the world had given us. And so just as Ezra and Nehemiah and the Zionists created the new people, so also did Farad create the tribe of Shabazz. The tribe of Shabazz. Shlomo Sand, the professor at Tel Aviv University, talks about the invention of the Jewish people. Well, Farad created a new people as well, the tribe of Shabazz. There was no historic tribe of Shabazz. It is a manufactured myth, upon and founded again in the same way that minds make men and quote unquote people as well. So we're about to walk into that. I have no idea when the last slide. This darkness doesn't give me my pages here. But hold on. Islamic studies. I want you to understand who put the publication I'm about to mention, this article I'm about to mention. I want you to understand. These are people who have given scholarly attention to the question that I'm going to share with you. Islamic Studies is an internationally peer-reviewed research journal published by Islamic Research Institute, Islamabad, Pakistan, since 1962. It publishes research articles, notes, comments, reviews, art review articles, and book reviews in all disciplines of Islamic studies, including the Quran, Hadith, Tafsir, Sirah, Ilm al-Kalam, jurisprudence, fiqh, law, religion, philosophy, psychology, anthropology, sociology, culture, civilization, economics, language, literature, history, science, and technology. Its contributors include some of the very best scholars from across the world. Articles and book reviews published in Islamic studies are abstracted or indexed in Science of Religion, indexed. These are places where they are curated, let's say. Science of Religion, Index Islamicus, Public Affairs, Information Service, International Biography, The Reasons of Islam, Muslim World, Book Review, Middle East Journal, ATLA, Religion Database, Religion Index 1, and Index Book Reviews in Religion. Islamic Studies is archived in databases like Gestor, which is where I found it, Ebesco, Host, and ProQuest. It is among the journals approved by Higher Education Commission of Pakistan for research publications. That means that, okay, you can use this stuff here in your research. So we vet, we clear, we screen, etc. It has to fit this paradigm in order for it to be here. If it doesn't fit the paradigm, it's not going to fit that. You're not going to find it here. All right, that being said, let's go. In that publication, this question is asked, and this question is what's posted up. The name Shabazz, where did it come from? All right, Yahya Manastra is the one, and I doubt that he's American. Although doesn't really love it, doesn't matter since it's a global issue. So that lets you know how significant just the question is in the world of Islam and of scholarship around Islam. Where did the name Shabazz come from? Let's go. So the main premise of the, and it's only a 4-page article. Okay, these are abstractions of the authors or the scholars' presentation. The main premises are these. The name Shabazz gained popularity through Malcolm X's adoption of it and Elijah Muhammad's teaching in the Nation of Islam. Despite, and this is critical, despite its popularity, there's been no clear explanation of its origin within the Nation of Islam. This is a scholar researching it. He's saying, and he did research. It's like, no, Nation of Islam had no explanation for where the name comes from, right? Meaning its origin. We know where it is in the myth, but why that word, right? Speculations about its origin range from Old Testament references to connections with Persian names like Shahbaz. My note is that the author dismisses these as being too distant to connect through transference from Indian culture or of etymological derivation, meaning it can't be from these because there's too much distance between the words that you say is connected with and the word itself. And then they go on, it says a potential Arabic origin for the name is explored due to Elijah Muhammad's background and teaching. And my note here is also that the author makes the assumption that since he, Elijah Muhammad, was a Muslim, that the answer must be in the Arabic, right? And so it's like you can already see as an outsider, you don't really understand. Elijah Muhammad really did have no touch with the Arabic per se. So it's sort of like they're thinking that doctrinally Elijah Muhammad came up with the name out of his Arabic background. No, not true. In any case, they come to the conclusion, the author, that he suggests that Shabazz is a compound of two Arabic words, Shab, meaning a people, and Az, meaning mighty and glorious. He makes the connection in the article from Azza wa Jalla, the great and the glorious, right? Azza wa Jalla. So he's saying it's connected with the people and it's connected with Az, which means mighty and glorious. And this compound fits well. This is his conclusion. This compound fits well with the intended meaning and purpose behind Elijah Muhammad's teachings, aligning with the notion of uplifting African American people. So he landed on that as the way of identifying the source of Shabazz, because he's saying, well, Elijah Muhammad's trying to uplift his people, and Elijah Muhammad has this Arabic connection, and these two words, when you put them together, they fit the plan that Elijah has for his people. So it says, therefore, the conclusion is that Shabazz means a people mighty and glorious in Arabic, fitting the narrative of empowerment with the Nation of Islam. That's what the scholar says in this publication is where Shabazz comes from. Now, here comes the insider information that he didn't have, okay? And here it is. He said one of the lengthiest published expositions on the mythology of the tribe of Shabazz is it. Now, this is the scholar. I'm pulling this out of the scholar's paper. He says one of the lengthiest published expositions on the mythology of the tribe of Shabazz is in Elijah Muhammad's book, Message to the Black Man in America. In the chapter, The Original Man, Know Thyself. He's quoting Message to the Black Man now. It says, God has declared that we are the descendants of the Asian Black nation and of the tribe of Shabazz. Originally, they were the tribe that came with the earth, or this part. Remember the deportation of the moon, right? When did it happen? 60 trillion years ago. Mind-blowing numbers, right? 60 trillion years ago, when a great explosion on our planet divided it into two parts, one we call the earth and the other the moon. We, the tribe of Shabazz, says Allah God, quoting Elijah Muhammad, were the first to discover the best part of our planet to live on. the rich Nile Valley of Egypt, and the present seat of the holy city, Mecca, Arabia. We are the mighty, the wise, the best, but we do not know it. So again, here's the mythology, here's the grandeur, all that being set up in Message of the Black Man. And again, this scholar is saying that this is what speaks to the origins of the name of the tribe of Shabazz. So let's walk through this. And so to set everybody here at rather be informed, be advised, and those of you who are online, my outer boundary for what I'm saying right now, it may be shorter than that, but is the time for Asr, because this way I'm sure I can get the compact remaining ideas in. Since we now know that Sephardim, this is the inside, right? Since we now know the Sephardim background of W.D. Farad and his myth-based strategy, we can reason from that Shabazz relates to Arabic, Hebrew, and Spanish, not just Arabic for the reasons that the scholar said, but all three of them, because we know there's a Hebrew connection, there's a Spanish connection, and there's an Arabic connection. From the Arabic, in a question and answer session, Imam Muhammad was asked a question regarding the significance of the name Shabazz. Without elaboration, the Imam said that it was a veiled reference to Sheba, as in the Queen of Sheba, and that is essentially what the Imam said in response to the question. Here's the edification that I'd like to offer. We know that the name Sheba is Saba, which also connects to the Arabic for seven, Sabah. And the seventh day is the Sabbath day, right? So all these line up, the Sheba, the Saba, the Sabah, the Sabbath, all that's connected. This connects us to the Hebrew in this, and this is the big part of what I'm sharing with you today. It connects with the Hebrew. Remember Sephardim, right? Shabazz, Shabbos, and remember S and Z interchangeable. So there's your Shabazz right there. It's right there. But going on, a Shabazz goy, it's a thing, right? The Shabazz goy, which means a Sabbath Gentile. All right? And what is a Shabazz goy? It refers to a non-Jewish person who helps Jewish individuals or households with tasks that are prohibited on the Sabbath, which is Shabbat, right? We're still in that same language sphere. There are certain things that Jews can't do, Orthodox Jews can't do on the Sabbath, right? That's from sundown on Friday to sunset on Saturday. All right, and these tasks that they can't do, but they have Shabazz goy to do, Sabbath goy, Sabbath Gentile. Some of those tasks include turning on lights, cooking food, doing other activities that are considered to be work, because this is supposed to be the seventh day, so you're supposed to rest, so you're not supposed to do any work. So these would be considered work, and they are traditionally avoided by observant Jews during Shabbat. Now, I won't go through all these details on this, but there are many famous American Shabazz goy, Sabbath Gentiles, and goy basically means non-Jew, okay? Elvis Presley was a Shabazz goy. He served in that role for an Orthodox Jewish family named the Fructers. Barack Obama, when he shared office with an Orthodox Jew, he would often open up the electric door for his colleague on Sabbath, right? Al Gore, a senator, who served as senator, let his Orthodox Jewish colleague Lieberman stay across the street in an apartment that belonged to his parents, and he would turn the lights on and off for him on the Sabbath day. Harry Truman. When Truman lived next door to Orthodox Jew family in Independence, Missouri, he would help them with household chores that they could not do on the Sabbath. Mario Cuomo, also, he served as a Shabbat Goy for a nearby synagogue. And it's that experience that he credits with giving him greater sensitivity to the needs of the religious communities. Colin Powell spent so much time assisting a Jewish family in South Bronx that he became fluent in Yiddish. And then Thurgood Marshall, when an Orthodox Jewish Washington attorney, Nathan Levin, told the Supreme Court justice that he couldn't work late on Fridays and not on Saturdays, Justice Marshall replied to him, "Don't worry. I know all about the rules of Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. You see, I was a Shabbat Goy when I lived years ago in the Jewish section of Baltimore. So the Shabbat Goy is a thing, right, in the Jewish faith. So that's the Arabic and that's the Hebrew. Here's the Spanish. The Spanish is connected with Zabata. Zabata, which means shoe. The spelling belongs to the same linguistic family, the Z and the S, and in Portuguese, it is Sabato. And the P and B in the Hebrew and the Arabic phonetics, they are interchangeable. So Sabato shares meaning space with Sabbath, Shabbat, Shabbos. The Sabbath day is the day set aside to remember what brought us to our erect human state. This is a statement from Imam Muhammad. Going on. Now, this is for me. The old Spanish word chapato, which was derived from the Latin word sagatos, means protected by a shoe. So the whole idea of shoe as protection is, as Imam Muhammad spoke with us as well, it's about this protection as I go further. The shoe is a symbol, Imam. The shoe is a symbol of the need in society to keep people's fundamental sensitivities protected from the potentially harmful influences of material life. All right? The Imam talks about the shoe god of the Egyptians, and it's connected because he asked us, the Imam, he said, how in the world can you get oo sound, S-H-O-E, and you say shoe? Well, how you get that? Shoe. Because that shoe is related to the god Shu in Egyptian mythology. So the idea, however, as it relates to our feet, right? It's the protection that comes from being emotionally and spiritually disciplined, focused, concentrating on moral rectitude, right? So the Sabbath is for bringing us to our senses and for disciplining the society to conform to good morals. I want to say, as I continue, this is what the Nation of Islam did for those who joined it. It brought about this moral rectitude. It brought about this emotional and spiritual discipline. It brought about the wherewithal to be protected from the harmful influence of society, because we're literally forbidden to do everything. I go to movies now in the way that I do. Absolutely no movies when we were in the Nation of Islam, etc. None of the music, none of all those things were restricted to us and from us. And that was what we attribute to our standing upright. One of the supplications that we know afterwards came from Quran in essence. It says, surely I have turned myself to thee, O Allah. We said in the FOI, it said, trying to be upright to him who originated the heavens and the earth. We put the trying in there because there again, we're still in wudu, right? And so we weren't being given the Quran purely, but we were given the Quran in essence. And so the idea is to constantly try to be upright. And this meant being emotionally and spiritually disciplined. That's what the FOI, that's what the Nation of Islam, that's what it brought to us as well. Disciplining ourselves with focus and concentration. Now, when we talk about it historically, becoming Homo erectus in our evolution as human beings and standing on our feet, that was and that is our greatest feat. So you had FEAT. It was a great feat. Standing up on our feet, and what's connected with our feet? Our soul. Our soul. The soul is what we're standing on. Our soul. We're standing on our feet, and it is that righteousness, and it is that shoe that protects our soul in symbolic intent. The shoe represents the cultural protections that lift our basic instincts and sensitivities up to take them out of contact with low desires. That's what the Nation of Islam did. The restricted laws of Islam. You could get C time, D time, C time, F time. If you violated, you broke those laws. So we won't. It is in order that we won't be influenced by our material appetites. So the FOI, the MGT, GCC, 1 meal a day. That was really cutting us back on feeding our appetites. That is, we weren't nurturing appetites. It's like 1 meal a day, right? And of course, that ties to getting off to the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Father, Son, Holy Ghost pattern. So put us on the Tawheed pattern, put us on the one God pattern, so you only eat 1 time a day. And you can know the power of this and how this meaning connects to the morality, because there's a mockery statement that people make. Oh, she's Miss Goody Two Shoes, right? That's a statement about, oh, you want to be righteous and pure, right? Why? It's your shoes, because your shoes are what protects you. And so one of the names that we're given, that is as a people, one of the names is Shine. One of those is Shine. And then Shoe Shine Boy. That's a paradigmatic, stereotypical image of us. Why? Because it is the way we are by nature, and that nature coming through purely, it has the ability to clean up the shoes of other people, to clean up the souls of other people. I tried to get the chat to print up a picture of Martin Luther King as a shoe shine boy, and Frederick Douglass as a shoe shine boy, Malcolm X as a shoe shine boy, but it's against the principles of the platform. They said no, that would be insulting to some people, so no, we can't do that. But in reality, when you understand it in the best way, that's who we were. Nat Turner was a shoe shine boy, because they had the wherewithal, they had the language to purify and to clean up and to bring out the brightness and the brilliance in the soul. They are and were the brightness and the brilliance of the soul because of their own uprightness. That's our place. That's our place in the world. It's given as in a sense of mockery, but it's holding the rich meaning that it has. So here, the Shabazz Goy, Farad used the so-called American Negro as a tribe of Shabazz. He had a whole tribe of Shabazz Goy, right? To do, listen to this, to do what he couldn't do as a knowing Muslim. As a knowing Muslim, he knew that this is risky business. You are taking license, you are taking liberties with telling these people these things about Allah, God, the creation, their nature, the religion, etc. You know, you take, and that's what the man points out, he was a gambler in that respect. So, in a manner of speaking, he wasn't trying to do it himself. He had to get someone else to do and carry out and execute his plan. So, what did he do? He created a tribe of Shabazz Goy to do what he couldn't do as a knowing Muslim in religion, because to do so, to do that is to violate the Sabbath, right? The will and the plan of God for the human being. But his again, he was counteracting. He was fighting fire with fire. He was making a decision to do this because, in his estimation, the kind of work that needs to be done in the psyche of the sleeping mentally dead so-called American Negro called for structuring an ideology and an institution such as this in order to get them out of the horrid condition that they have been put in by the people that he's standing against. So he took a chance. He did what he did, and I thank Allah that he did do it. He was also communicating to the elite among the Jews of his own mastery of the science and his penetration into the secret. And he is also called Master Farad Muhammad, right? He used his mythology, which at another time we can go into the detail of it. He used his mythology, which can be read and understood as a noble lie. Noble lie is not something. It's not something that is unprecedented. That's what is done by so many. You can find it in whatever the Buddha, whatever goes in Buddhism. I guess that is what it is. There's a story there where the father lies to the children. Let's put it real quick. There's Jonathan A.C. Brown in his book Misquoting Muhammad. You can find a detail of this, but the idea is that this Buddhist father, master, what have you, the house was on fire, but the children were playing inside the house, and they needed to get the children out of the house. So he told the children that he had candy and he had something for them out here, outside the house. And so the children came out of the house, but he didn't have any candy when he said that. But enticing them with that got them away from the danger. And so for that reason, that's why it's called a noble lie. It's a lie, but it's a noble lie that has apparently a good end in mind. And of course, and that particular story goes on that yes, they got more enlightenment, they got this and that, so it was worth the exchange, but it's still called a noble lie. He used, that's Farad, he used his mythology and the mystical maze of the Nation of Islam as satirical theater to cathartically purify or shine the souls of blacks and whites. I think this is one of the things that we may not quite understand as well. That see, the people from the outside, the people who are outside the Nation of Islam, they were actually getting perhaps better, stronger influences for their life change than many inside the Nation of Islam. Because those inside the Nation of Islam, they were actors in a play that had been designed for them in a particular role, such that what they were doing were projecting out to the world, and the world would say, oh, that's so beautiful. That's so, look at think about other Negroes looking at these. Yeah, I want to, that was deep right there. Knock my glasses off, can't even find them. All right, here we go. So in any case, when they see the model behavior, then it influences the one outside who's not even a member to want to be better. Even when our women would walk around, those people who are intoxicated, acting foolish, etc., they would stand up, straighten up, try to make themselves respectable in that presence. And so it is with the whole world. Also, as far as the blacks are concerned, the quote unquote blacks, they would want to be better and want to be out of the condition that they saw themselves in. And that's because of the projection of the theater to them, say you can be better than you are. And when the whites get the story that comes from people like El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X, et cetera, and others, talking about the viciousness, the savagery, the murder, the lynching, the lying, et cetera, when they're told about that, that also has the effect of purifying them, who would be purified, so that they would become better people, so that they would become more moral, more fair, more just, because the picture that they're given by the theater that Farad set up is like, no, that's a bad picture, that's a bad look, so we don't want to be there. So it was having this kind of impact on both the blacks and whites, just by those who are on stage as the Nation of Islam, executing or carrying out their roles as such. So in summary, the main thesis is this. Professor Farad worked to create a language environment. There's so much of this, in fact, all of this is actually language. Create a language environment which would be strong enough, that would hold the group long enough to reverse the effects of the peculiar system of slavery. The experimental clinic and that would act as a womb or a prison or a jig for, pardon me, food for our emaciated egos and emasculated self-images, i.e., we're given Asiatic black man, Yakub's myth, etc. And this would give birth to those in those individuals, or to birth an individual with the new psychology that manifests that original human innocence, freedom, and performance intended by Allah for all human beings. This is a restoration to your possibilities and the potential that's in your very nature, right? And that was the general hope of Professor Farad. Remember, naming Wallace before Wallace was born and putting them to a process to ensure that that gets ingrained in them and in him. And so the strategy that he worked with Wallace D, he gave Imam Muhammad the D in his name and never told them what the D stood for. He worked with Wallace D, his work with Wallace, the strategy he worked with Wallace D was to work it from the womb. I can tell you a story about the Polgar sisters. I want you to go ahead and look it up because I want to wind this up. The Polgar sisters and the Williams sisters, both of them, their fathers, that is the father, King Charles, and whatever his name was, I believe. That's the label for the movie I'm trying to say. King Richard, and the Polgar sisters, these are chess champions who are females, to break that idea and the stereotype that women can't be chess champions. But this was all done before the Williams sisters were born, before the Polgar sisters were born. Both their fathers, both the fathers of these girls, both of them had a plan, and they planned with the wife to make that happen. And so that's what they did, and that's also what Farad did with Clara Evans Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad, such that even if he failed with the existing group that he had, quote unquote, converted, if you will, having that new psychology in work and having that in place, even if he failed with the existing group, he had the opportunity to give birth to the success in Wallace D. Muhammad, and we know the rest is history. So Elijah Muhammad was the one who communicated Master Farad's vision and teachings and evolved it into a powerful, righteous nation. It was the work of Elijah Muhammad. Farad Muhammad was like the coach or the manager on the sidelines, whatever. I'm just giving a metaphor. The one who had to execute was the one that's on the field. Elijah Muhammad was the one that was on the field and in the field to make it work. Farad left 1934. The 40 years following that, it was all on Elijah Muhammad to make that happen. That's very, very powerful. So Master Farad was the initiator of the transformative movement, but Elijah Muhammad was the key figure in its perpetuation and growth. Here's a statement from an anti-Islamist, some people call them Islamophobes, Daniel Pipes. He had an article in 2000 entitled How Elijah Muhammad Won. I have to tell you, it was and is actually a good article, even though his motivation is towards something else. But the point is that the way he lays out this early history is about Malcolm, history about Elijah Muhammad, etc. And I'm just pulling out this particular quote for our purposes. He says, it does not take much imagination. This is after he goes through all the things that I'm kind of suggesting to you. Talked about Malcolm, talked about others, Martin Luther King and other people. He said, it doesn't take much imagination to see that should Islam in fact replace Christianity as the primary religion of African Americans, this will have vast significance for all Americans, affecting everything from race relations to foreign policy, from popular culture to issues of religion and state. See Eric Lincoln, who he's speaking of now, a leading authority on African American Islam, once wrote that the Nation of Islam might well change the course of history in the West. Should that come to pass, the author says, the credit or blame will belong above all to the squeaky little man teaching hate, Elijah Muhammad. He said, if Islam comes to prevail in America, put it on Elijah Muhammad. Elijah won. And this is for somebody that don't like Islam. He said, I can't deny. Elijah put it down. And so like whatever everybody else did, Elijah won. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And here we are, statement from the Imam, and I'm pretty sure this is the end here. It says, no, Imam Muhammad, he said, no one is born from the mother of an African, from the mother as African, I believe that's what it should say. No one is born from the mother an African, a Chinese, an Asian, or European. You are born human, and the environment connects you with history, your family, Africa, and all of that. The child can be taken straight from mama and put anywhere else and become Chinese or probably Japanese, French, Spanish, depending on the language that it learns and whoever cares for it, right? So that tells us we're human first. And I see it as clothing. We're back to this clothing. And God made me human first. That's my naked self. And then I clothe my human life with my African American life. I clothe it with my American life. That means the national life. I clothe it with all these clothes. But if the clothing becomes more important than what I'm covering, the human life, all of it becomes trash. So this is what God wants us to know. This is a Penn State University presentation by the Imam. So this clothing and stripping and clothing, we'll say more about it in the future. But when you talk about the original human nature and the purity of human nature, that's the goal, that's the intention, to get to and to express naturally that original human nature, and that the clothes, whatever clothes we put on and whatever skin that we're in, if you will, it should never transcend, it should never become more important than that original human nature. And whenever we allow something other than that to take over our perception, our sense of worth, our sense of value, then the reality of our human life becomes trash, and we don't want that to happen. And I put my little quote up here. This is Imam Muhammad on February 26, 1975, before he stood up to speak and change the whole thing. He's sitting there, I got next. Farrakhan said what he said. Jesse Jackson said what he said. Who else? Muhammad Ali said what he said. All the big boys said what they said. Then Imam Muhammad stood up, and nothing has been the same. And I'm not finished. So, inshallah, a couple of weeks from now, we'll be able to do that, because what we're going to address going forward is the last resurrection and the Renaissance. The last resurrection and the Renaissance, inshallah. So, alhamdulillah, I'm going to cut out right now and then give the opportunity. I know we are formally at prayer time, but I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask Nosizwe if she, let me see what I'm doing here. Yes, that's it. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was awesome. So profound.
Masha.
I have a lot of processing to do.
Masha.
I really wanted to pose a question. It was what I call a level one question. Just quick clarification regarding, go back to my question.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding what you mentioned regarding did you mean that W.B. Muhammad, did you say that W.B. Muhammad conveyed that during the earlier days the NOI, the name Muhammad was quote unquote disguised as?
No.
I didn't.
It was disguised. Muhammad. They were told to say that their last name was Muhammad. It's a disguise of Muhammad. And the Turkish did the same thing when they say Mehmet. Mehmet is a quote unquote corruption, if you will, of Muhammad. So Muhammad, but then that fits into the doxology of Farad, that we were brought up from the muck and the mud of society. And so they were given that as a way of speaking, but it's holding that symbolism as to where we came from. We came from the muck and the mud. So it says muck mud.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
There are no additional questions.
All right. Well, alhamdulillah, it's been wonderful. No, Ciswe, I want to thank you for going along on this ride with all the technical peaks and valleys, if you will. And we look forward to continue to work with you on your dissertation. I have another young man here, Tyson Amir, who is working very deeply with us in this work, but also in the area of education and information that we're talking about. We want this master narrative to be complete, concise, rigorous, and transportable and transmissible to so many others, because this is the story that we need to become the lens that we see life and live life through. So I'm looking forward to continuing more with you in your work in that, and Tyson, of course, as well. And some people not being mentioned now. I want to thank Camila, Haja Camila Shul. In all ways. Love you all. Alhamdulillah. Ramadan Mubarak. May Allah accept our fast. And inshallah, we will have the Eid quite possibly Wednesday. We are seeking the moon, but by the count, it should be Wednesday. Meshaworth Eid. We will be having the Eid here. And tonight is Laylatul Qadr for us here. Inshallah, New Africa Kitchen is going to be providing the suhoor for us, mashallah. And I will have another presentation tonight starting at 11, inshallah. And the focus is going to be on the Quran, focus on Quranic language and how the importance of that shaping our life, mind, psychology. Everybody have a wonderful evening. God's peace be on you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. All right. Yes. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Not to say what you say, but is the Arabic language would you say like born? Is the Arabic language born out of the ancient Hebraic language?
No.
So
No.
where did we get? Where did we get?
You gonna be with us tonight? You gonna be with us tonight?
Inshallah.
All right,
I
so
promise.
inshallah. Okay, well then, let me hit you with just a little bit. No, the Arabic language was not born out of the ancient quote unquote Hebrew language. In fact, those who are scholars of Hebrew, they use the Arabic grammar to check their own grammar, meaning that the purity of language, the purity of as a Semitic language, the label has been given, Arabic is more pure than Hebrew, right?
But is Arabic still Semitic?
Yes, but based on the fact it is Semitic, based on the fact that that's the way it's been categorized in the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Semitic, because actually that region, all that where all the trouble is happening, it's like that's the same language. So they're just like when I talked about Spanish, Portuguese, those languages, those are like European languages, right?
Right.
Portuguese is different than Spanish, but since they're all in the same region, I think they call them Romance languages and the like. So similarly, the Arabic and Hebrew are Semitic. That's why a lot of the Arabic words sound like Hebrew words and vice versa, right? We say Assalamu alaikum. The Hebrew would be Shalom aleichem,
Yeah.
right? And so many other words. But yeah, we're going to get into the issue of that language, inshallah, tonight, 11 p.m. I guess we will be broadcasting. So I don't know. It's going to be on one platform. So I'll probably just connect with the Facebook, YouTube side at 11 tonight, inshallah. All right, we out. Assalamu alaikum. Yes.
It doesn't have to be clear. But did you say just now you want to be on one particular?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Facebook, YouTube Yeah, yeah, OS2, but it's one when I use StreamYard, and the signal just gets split out to others. All right.